Imagine waking up one day not to the sound of an alarm but to a silence so profound it has a weight of its own. The sun slants through the blinds in familiar bars of light, dust motes dancing in a ritual as old as time. You go through your morning routine. The showers steam, the toothbrushes scrape the bitter kiss of coffee, but something is different. It's not that the world has changed. It's that the meaning has drained from it, like color bleeding from a photograph. The job you work, the goals you pursue, the relationships you nurture, suddenly, they feel like artifacts in a museum of someone else's life. You look at the frantic hustle of the world outside your window. People rushing to meetings, scrolling through feeds filled with curated triumphs, arguing over politics, buying things they're told will make them happy, and a single terrifying question forms in your mind, so quiet it deafens all other sound. What is any of this for? Not in a practical sense. You know the practical answers. You work to earn money, you earn money to survive, you survive to, what, to continue working? To build a legacy? To raise children who will then step onto the same treadmill, their feet finding the same worn grooves until they too one day look up and wonder. The entire edifice of human endeavor, from our most ancient pyramids to our most sophisticated digital networks, seems to rest on a foundation that, in this moment of clarity, feels no more solid than mist. This is not depression, though it shares its wardrobe. Depression is a sadness that colors the world. This is something else. This is a sudden sobering clarity, a cognitive shift. It is the realization that the values, purposes, and meanings you have taken for granted, that society has screamed at you since birth, are not inherent truths. They are stories. Compelling perhaps, useful maybe, but they are stories we have told ourselves to ward off the chill of the infinite silent dark. This is the whisper of nihilism. Not the cartoonish villainy of someone who destroys for the sake of destruction, but the quiet philosophical tremor that asks, if nothing we do ultimately matters in the vast, indifferent cosmos, if the universe will eventually experience heat death in all our art, our love, our wars, and our wisdom will be erased as if they never were, then what is the point of any of it? Why be moral? Why strive for greatness? Why suffer through the daily indignities and heartbreaks? Why not simply cease? This question is a vortex. It pulls everything into its gravitational field. The minor anxieties that kept you awake last night seem absurdly trivial. The major triumphs you've spent years chasing feel like trophies made of ash. The love you feel for others, while real and potent, now seems tragically fragile, a flickering candle in a hurricane of time. You are faced with the grand tautology. We are born, we live, we die. And in the face of that, every ambition, every fear, every constructed meaning can feel like an elaborate game of pretend. But what if this moment of terrifying emptiness is not an end, but a necessary beginning? What if the void you are staring into is not an abyss to consume you, but a blank canvas? The only kind upon which an authentic life can truly be painted. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who famously declared God is dead, did not see this as a cause for celebration, but as a colossal challenge. He warned that the loss of our foundational myths would lead to a crisis of meaning, a nihilism that would be the greatest danger and the greatest opportunity for humanity. So, the question is not merely an intellectual exercise. It is the most urgent question of your life. Are the meanings we cling to merely comforting illusions? A collective lie we agree to believe in to make the unbearable truth of our cosmic insignificance more palatable? Or is there a way to stare directly into the void and not only remain standing, but to find a freedom and a purpose there more profound than any ready-made answer could ever provide? The silence in your room is waiting. The hollow feeling in your chest is not a verdict but an invitation. To understand the answer, you must first have the courage to follow the question into the deepest possible dark. The hollow feeling, the silent question, it does not emerge from a vacuum. You have not stumbled upon some obscure forgotten truth. You have rather brushed against the central hidden problem of the modern world. The problem is not that life has no meaning. The problem is that we have been living on an inherited and now depleted spiritual capital, and the bankruptcy is finally becoming apparent. For most of human history, the question, "What is it all for?" had a ready-made, non-negotiable answer. It was God, it was the kingdom. It was your duty to your tribe, your caste, your family name. Your purpose was assigned, woven into the very fabric of a cosmos teeming with divine intention. You were a soldier for Christ, a cog in the great wheel of Dharma, a servant of the Pharaoh, a link in the ancestral chain. Your life was not your own, and in that surrender there was a profound, if coercive, sense of place. The universe was a story, and you had a designated role. Then the foundations cracked. The scientific revolution dismantled the geocentric universe, placing us on a random rock orbiting an average star in a forgotten corner of a galaxy among billions. Charles Darwin revealed that we were not special creations, but advanced apes, the product of blind algorithmic natural selection. And finally, Friedrich Nietzsche's madman ran into the marketplace to declare, "God is dead, and we have killed him." This was not a cry of atheistic triumph, but a prophecy of terror. He was diagnosing a cultural condition, the collapse of the metaphysical framework that had structured Western consciousness for millennia. We had murdered God with our reason, our skepticism, our science, and now we were left alone, staring into the abyss with the blood of the ultimate meaning giver on our hands. This is the birth of the passive nihilist. This is the hidden force you felt upon waking. Passive nihilism is not a philosophy one chooses. It is a condition one succumbs to. It is the quiet, despairing acceptance that since the old meanings are dead, there can be no meaning at all. It is the psychological state of living in the aftermath of a funeral for a deity you no longer believed in, but whose presence you desperately miss. Why does this feel so existentially heavy? Because we are meaning-making creatures trapped in a universe that appears indifferent. The psychologist Carl Jung understood that the modern individual, having lost the container of organized religion, is thrown back upon their own resources. The psyche's need for meaning and symbolism does not simply vanish. It becomes repressed, and the unconscious then manifests this hunger in distorted ways. We see this everywhere. The frantic consumerism that promises fulfillment through possession. The fanatical devotion to political ideologies that offer the purity of a crusade. The cult of wellness that preaches self-optimization as a new form of salvation. These are secular religions, desperate attempts to fill the God-shaped hole in the modern soul. They are what the writer Aldous Huxley warned of in Brave New World, a society pacified by pleasure, distraction, and trivial pursuits, anesthetized against the fundamental questions. The French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre stared directly into this void and declared, "Man is condemned to be free." Condemned. Because without God there is no divine blueprint for human nature. There is no preordained essence that we are meant to live up to. We are thrust into existence, and it is through our choices and actions alone that we define ourselves. This freedom is not liberating. It is, at first, an unbearable weight of responsibility. We are, as Sartre put it, forlorn, because there is no one to appeal to, no higher court to justify our choices. We are the lonely artists of our own lives, faced with a blank canvas that we are terrified to paint upon. This is the psychological root of the anxiety you feel. It is not a chemical imbalance, but an existential one. It is the dizziness of freedom. To acknowledge this is to understand that the feeling of meaninglessness is not a personal failing, but a logical, almost inevitable response to the cultural and philosophical landscape we inhabit. We are like sailors who have been given a ship but no destination, adrift on an infinite ocean, and we are slowly realizing that the maps we inherited are fictions. The hidden problem, then, is a double bind. We have slain the dragons of superstition and dogma, but in doing so we have burned down the castle we lived in. We prize the freedom of doubt so highly that we dissolve the very structures that gave our lives coherence. Now we float in a space without gravity, longing for the ground we ourselves destroyed. This is the precarious ledge upon which the modern mind balances. To look down is to see the abyss of passive nihilism, a life of quiet resignation, distraction and despair. But to look forward into the stark, terrifying freedom is to see the possibility of a different path. The void is not just an end. It is a condition of possibility. But to move toward it requires understanding the intricate, invisible ways this crisis of meaning has already shaped your reality, trapping you in a prison you cannot see. The consequences of this unaddressed problem are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are the very air you breathe, the water you swim in. They have built the walls of your cell, and they have convinced you that the walls are the world. The crisis of meaning is not a distant philosophical debate. It is a silent, pervasive force that sculpts the topography of your daily life. It is the ghost in the machine of your psyche, the invisible hand guiding your anxieties, your addictions, and your quietest moments of despair. You believe you are making free choices, but you're often just performing elaborate rituals to ward off the silence. Look at the world you navigate every day. The economy is no longer just a system for producing and distributing goods. It is a vast, intricate machine for the manufacturing and distribution of purpose. It offers you a ready-made identity in exchange for your participation. You are what you consume. Your worth is your productivity. Your life is a project to be optimized. This is the great unspoken pact of modern society. We will give you small, manageable goals to chase: the next promotion, the bigger house, the more exotic vacation, the perfect body, and in return you will not ask the big, unsettling questions. The writer David Foster Wallace called these the default settings of adult life. The freedom to be lords of our own tiny skull-sized kingdoms, alone at the center of all creation. But these kingdoms are fragile. This is why the threat of failure feels so catastrophic. It's not just the loss of status or comfort. It's the terrifying exposure of the underlying void. If you fail to achieve the goals you've been given, what remains? The abyss. So you run faster on the treadmill, terrified that if you stop, even for a moment, the ground beneath it will vanish. This dynamic is amplified and weaponized by the digital architectures that now mediate our reality. Social media platforms are not neutral town squares. They are engines of attention that thrive on manufactured outrage and curated envy. They offer a semblance of connection while systematically isolating you. Why does a political argument online feel so existentially charged? Because in a world stripped of grand narratives, tribal affiliation becomes a substitute for meaning. Your political identity becomes a crusade, a way to belong to something larger than yourself, to feel morally righteous and purposeful. The algorithm, in its cold mathematical genius, understands this hunger and feeds it, locking you into an echo chamber that confirms your worldview and vilifies the other. Because conflict is engaging, it gives you a dragon to fight, even if the dragon is a phantom. On a neurological level, this constant state of low-grade emergency and validation seeking has concrete consequences. Your brain's reward system, the delicate dance of dopamine that evolved to motivate survival behaviors like finding food and forming social bonds, is now hijacked by the ping of a notification, the heart-shaped approval of a stranger. You are trapped in a Skinner box of your own making, compulsively pressing the lever for a pellet of social validation that, once consumed, leaves you even hungrier. The psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps by finding meaning in the midst of unimaginable suffering, presciently warned that the existential vacuum of modern life often manifests as a mass neurotic triad of depression, aggression, and addiction. We see it everywhere: the aimless scrolling, the binge-watching, the opioid crisis, the rage that boils over on highways and in comment sections. These are not mere personal failings. They are symptoms of a soul screaming into a void, seeking sensation, any sensation, to prove it still exists. This is the ultimate unseen consequence, the normalization of this quiet desperation. You have been culturally conditioned to believe that this state, this low-grade anxiety, this frantic busyness, this feeling of being perpetually behind and unfulfilled, is just what life is. You medicate it with productivity hacks, mindfulness apps, and weekend binges, treating the symptoms while the disease, the unaddressed question of why, rages on. You are like a sailor on a ship that has lost its destination, and instead of looking for a new star to navigate by, you are frantically polishing the brass, rearranging the deck chairs, and arguing with the other crew members about the most efficient way to row, all while the ship drifts further into meaningless waters. The most pernicious part of this trap is that it convinces you that the problem is you. You are not disciplined enough, not grateful enough, not successful enough. This internalization is the final brick in the prison wall. It keeps you focused on self-improvement within the system, never questioning the system itself. You are trying to solve a philosophical crisis with a technical solution, and it will never work. The tension is now at its peak. You can see the bars of the cage. You can feel the weight of the manufactured purposes you've been carrying. The void has been painted over with bright, loud, demanding colors, but you can still sense its presence underneath, threatening to peel through. To remain here is to accept a life of managed despair, a comfortable numbness. But there is another way. It is not a path of finding a new pre-packaged meaning to consume. It is a path of rebellion. It requires a radical, counterintuitive, and terrifying shift. To stop running from the void and to turn and face it not as an enemy, but as the source of your ultimate freedom. The rebellion does not begin with a roar but with a silence. It starts the moment you stop running. It is the conscious, deliberate act of turning away from the frantic chase for manufactured purpose and facing the very void you have been taught to fear. This is not a retreat. It is the most profound and radical act of defiance available to a modern human being. It is the decision to stop being a passive nihilist, who laments the absence of meaning, and to become an active one, who recognizes the sublime freedom in that absence. The first and most crucial step is what the existentialists called authenticity. For Jean-Paul Sartre, this was the core of his philosophy. He defined bad faith as the act of lying to oneself to escape the anguish of freedom. You are in bad faith when you tell yourself, I have to do this job, it's what's expected. Or this is just the way I am, I can't change. These are excuses. They are ways of pretending you are not free, that you are an object with a fixed essence rather than a consciousness with limitless potential. To be authentic is to take full, radical responsibility for your choices. It is to acknowledge that every moment you remain in a situation, you are choosing it. This is terrifying because it removes all your alibis, but it is also the genesis of all true power. This is where Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy becomes not a diagnosis of despair, but a prescription for greatness. He saw the death of God not as a catastrophe, but as the ultimate liberation. The universe is now a blank slate, and we are the ones who must become the creators of value. He introduced the world to the Übermensch, the Overman or Superman, not a blonde beast of fascist fantasy, but a psychological archetype. The Übermensch is the one who has overcome themselves, who has stared into the abyss and has the courage to say, I will to give my own meaning to this chaos. I will to become a law unto myself. How does one begin this in practice? It begins with a ruthless inventory of your own life. Take every value, every goal, every should and must you carry. Hold them up to the light and ask, did I choose this, or was it chosen for me? By my parents, by my culture, by the algorithm? This process is what James Hollis, a Jungian analyst, calls swampland. It is the difficult, murky work of confronting the gaps between the life you are living and the life that is authentically yours. It requires you to sacrifice who you have been told you are supposed to be on the altar of who you might become. This is the counterintuitive solution. The way out of meaninglessness is not to find meaning, but to create it. And you create it not through grand world historical acts, but through the quality of your engagement with the world right in front of you. Viktor Frankl, building on his experiences in the camps, formulated logotherapy, which posits that the primary drive in life is not pleasure, as Freud argued, but the will to meaning. And he argued that we can find meaning in three primary ways. First, by creating a work or doing a deed. This is not about climbing a corporate ladder for external validation. It is about immersing yourself in a task that demands your full attention and skill, that represents a creative expression of your unique self. The carpenter who loses himself in the perfect joint, the writer wrestling with a sentence until it sings, the gardener nurturing life from soil. This is active, world-engaging meaning. Second, by experiencing something or encountering someone. This is the meaning found in love, in beauty, in relationship. It is the profound connection you feel when you look into the eyes of someone you love, or when you stand before a breathtaking landscape and feel your smallness not as insignificance but as part of a vast, beautiful whole. This meaning is received, not achieved, and it requires you to be open, vulnerable, and present. Third, and most powerfully, by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. You cannot control what happens to you. You will face loss, illness, and ultimately death. But you always retain the freedom to choose your attitude in the face of that suffering. This is the ultimate rebellion. To find meaning in suffering is to transform a tragedy into a human achievement. It is to say, this pain will not break me. It will become a part of my story, and I will decide what that story means. This rebellion is a daily practice. It is choosing the work that challenges you over the work that merely pays you. It is choosing the difficult, truthful conversation over the comfortable silence. It is deleting the apps that fragment your attention and reclaiming the sovereignty of your own mind. It is the courage to be misunderstood, to be unpopular, to fail on your own terms rather than succeed on someone else's. You are no longer a prisoner begging for meaning from a silent universe. You are an artist, and your life is your medium. The blank canvas is not your enemy. It is your condition of possibility. But to move from rebellion to true liberation, you must grasp the final, most powerful realization. The ultimate truth is not something you find at the end of the journey. It is the very ground upon which you are already standing. The ultimate truth, the final revelation that redefines everything, is this. The void was never empty. You merely had the wrong eyes to see it. You have been searching for a meaning that exists out there, a fixed star in the cosmic fabric by which to navigate. You longed for a purpose inscribed in the laws of physics, a verdict from the universe that would declare your life worthwhile. But the universe is silent, not because it is indifferent, but because it is not a judge. It is a co-conspirator. The silence is not an absence of answers. It is an invitation to a different kind of conversation. The paradigm shift is this. Meaning is not a noun to be found, but a verb to be lived. It is not a destination, but the quality of your journey. It is the profound, shimmering significance that emerges in the space between your consciousness and the raw, uninterpreted fact of existence. The nihilist was right that no objective meaning is written in the stars, but tragically wrong to conclude that therefore nothing matters. The truth is the inverse. Because no objective meaning is written in the stars, everything matters infinitely, for it is we who get to assign the value. This is the essence of what Albert Camus called the absurd, the confrontation between the human need for meaning and the universe's unreasonable silence. For Camus, the only serious philosophical question is suicide, and the only valid response is rebellion. But his rebellion is not the fiery Nietzschean creation of new gods. It is a quieter, more relentless fidelity. It is the image of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a mountain for eternity, only to watch it roll back down. The traditional view is that this is the epitome of a meaningless existence. But Camus asks us to imagine Sisyphus happy. The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because in the moment Sisyphus turns to descend the mountain and walk back to his boulder, he is conscious of his fate. He possesses it. He is, in that moment, superior to his rock. His rebellion is his awareness, his refusal to be broken. His meaning is not in reaching the summit, a goal the gods designed to be eternally futile, but in the dignity he brings to the task itself. His meaning is in the strain of his muscles, the sweat on his brow, the clarity of his perception. His life, his entire universe, is contained in that struggle, and in embracing it, he defies the gods and reclaims his existence. Your life is Sisyphus's mountain. Your boulder is your work, your relationships, your art, your suffering. The ultimate truth is that the purpose was never in reaching the top. It was always in the quality of your push. It was in the love you poured into a child, the integrity you brought to a difficult task, the courage you mustered in the face of fear, the beauty you created or appreciated for no reason other than that it resonated with your soul. These are not second-rate consolations for the lack of a real purpose. They are the only things that have ever constituted a real purpose. This realization is what dissolves the last vestiges of the struggle. All your previous anxieties, the fear of not being enough, of not achieving enough, of being forgotten, were predicated on the old paradigm, the childish wish for a cosmic report card. There is no final exam. There is only the conversation. The Japanese concept of ikigai, your reason for being, is often misunderstood as a single, discoverable point. In truth, it is the dynamic, ever-changing confluence of what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. It is not a static identity but a living process. You are not a flawed being in a meaningless universe. You are the universe become conscious of itself. You are a localized field of awareness through which the cosmos can experience its own staggering beauty and terror. The pain of a stubbed toe, the sweetness of a ripe strawberry, the aching beauty of a sunset, the profound comfort of a shared silence. These are not trivial distractions. They are the point. They are the data of a meaningful existence. So the final action is not a grand, sweeping gesture. It is a subtle internal recalibration. It is to wake up tomorrow and as you feel the weight of the day to remember, this is my boulder. I choose how to push it. I choose with what spirit I engage. I will find meaning not in some distant future, achievement, but in the texture of this moment. The taste of my coffee, the challenge of my work, the warmth of a conversation, the simple, defiant act of continuing. The silence is not your enemy. It is the canvas. You are the artist, and you have been painting all along.